how does your approach to reading a script differ from when working with a new play as opposed to directing or being part of established work?
Well, when working with a new play, you typically have conversation with the playwright. And you're usually in relationship with the playwright and asking the playwright questions about um, some of the things that they would like to see happen to help them further their process, as opposed to working with a script that's already written. It's usually been produced more than once, and you usually don't have contact with the playwright. Sometimes you do, but usually you don't. And it's more of you as the director creating uh, the 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 world of the play, as opposed to consulting with the playwright. So
So, when it comes to, working through new works, like what is it like to kind of help, establish these new works or this new world that is being brought to stage, so to speak?
yeah, it's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure, but it's also fun because you get to be a part of this process, especially when you see it come to fruition, when you see it all come together, when you see it finally produced, when you see other theaters produce it, and when you see actors come on and say the words. And yeah, it can be a very, like I said, a lot of pressure, but it's also can be a very beautiful process because you have helped this director in their creation, or this playwright in their creations.
Hmm. Yeah, that seems like a really cool thing versus, doing something that's already been interpreted or created, and there's
Hmm. Yeah, because it's sort of like you have the director plays a huge role when it comes to creating new work. I'm also a playwright, so I know how directors play a huge roles, and these workshops help a lot. So
very cool. So, as someone that has been a playwright and a director, how do you feel about collaboration when it comes to putting these new works together? Is it something you welcome, especially when it comes to maybe interpreting a character, interpreting a scene, or those sort of things?
oh, I definitely welcome collaboration. I don't think a piece can develop properly if you don't have some sort of collaboration with it, because as a playwright, you're so married to the piece. So sometimes you can't see certain things that an outside person can see, or I think the actors in the workshop process are also very important, because when they say the words, you may interpret the words on the page a certain way, and then the actor takes the words and they interpret it a certain way. So it helps you see different aspects of the play in a different way. So I definitely encourage actually collaboration when it comes to new plays and things like that.
Very cool. That's actually really refreshing to hear because I've heard like both sides where some are very protective of their work and
Hmm.
they already have like like really set up like this is the direction I want to go, and can create a lot of tension when it comes to getting that feedback or
Oh yeah, that's
maybe
not me
that
at all.
other point of view.
I mean, there's when you are putting a workshop out, when you are a playwright and you do have workshops, sometimes it's hard to decipher what advice to use and what advice not to use. So that can be really hard, but it also opens up new avenues of the piece that you never even knew that could be discovered. For me, like you said, it's all subjective and personal and things like that. So, but I love the ensemble and collaborative process. So.
Awesome. Yeah, sorry for jumping off of the established questions you
That's
sent
okay.
out
That's
earlier.
perfectly fine.
But I think you um, you know, gave some great answers and great insight. Um, but going back to the questions I sent earlier, what are specific challenges that you face when casting for a new play?
um, Casting people who are going to play. You know what I mean? Casting people who are going to understand that this is a play in progress, and that their part is very vital. So, casting people who are going to understand that that they are in some way developing this character as well, you know, and someone who was fierce and not afraid to play with the role and to look at the role in a different aspect, even other than what the director might or the playwright might see, to help the playwright um, develop the character even further to even create more layers to the character. So that's always hard for that's always been a hard part for me, is like casting people who are a lot like, well, what do you want or what do you need, as opposed to like, this is the way that I see it, and I'm going to try to portray the character in the best way that I see it, with some advice from the director. So that's just been the hard part for me, is just finding actors who are fierce.
Gotcha. So you want someone that comes in and, already has their own take on it and maybe their own thoughts on it, instead of, looking for you to give them that insight, sort of thing.
Yeah, because it's still in process, and that's it's very important for me that people take on their own idea of what the character is. Just because, like I said, I want to see how other people interpret the script, especially in the early process. Later on, once we finalize the play and it's ready for production, that's a little different. But as we're working in process, it's really important for me for the actors to be ready to jump off the ledge with it and just play.
Gotcha. I mean, that's really cool. I've heard directors have like different thoughts on it. Some, have a full vision and they want you just to kind of, I guess,
Yep.
play that exact part. But I've always kind of
Mhm.
enjoyed, having someone that comes in with their own take on it, or maybe has
Mhm.
created like their own like background or backstory for that character, and
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
understands like, oh, this is how this character will react to this situation, because even though it's not, already been laid out, this and this and this happened in the past. But
Right.
yeah,
That me too.
yeah,
Yeah.
as a director, you probably have like way too much to do, instead of just kind of adding this extra information on there on top of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Mhm. Mhm.
All right. What is one thing you wish audiences knew about reading and or seeing plays in progress?
That it's not final. Um, Sometimes, and I'm pulling from my own experiences as well as a playwright. Sometimes when you get feedback from an audience, they're giving feedback based off of the idea that the play is finished yet, that it's finished, as opposed to it's in process. You know what I mean? Um, and that also that their participation is very vital as well. That the information that they give it can be very insightful, and it can be very, very it can change the play in a huge way. You know what I mean? So the audience take their position as being a part of a new work very seriously. uh, so yeah.
Okay, very cool. Sorry, I'm really congested.
No,
Um,
you're fine.
so my last question is, and I might add some on top of that, is um, what is the most challenging or rewarding thing about working with plays in development for you? And it sounds like this is something you have a lot of insight and passion on.
Yeah, just being a part of that process and seeing it all the way through, and seeing it to production, but also seeing the different variations of it, because plays, they can start at one point and then they can end at a completely different place. And being able to be a part of those different iterations, and being able to add, my perspective to those different iterations, and also working with the different actors on those different iterations, and seeing how each actor and director uh, interpret, these different iterations of the work in process. So yeah.
And just kind of adding on, because you kind of said you had like the insight of being a director and playwright. What has been more like, I guess, rewarding as an experience? Do you find it more rewarding as a playwright to, take part in this kind of collaborative experience and, see like your work come to life, or, you know, have you had like a more rewarding or exciting experience being a director and kind of taking this play and bringing it to life or giving it new life?
Ooh, that is a very hard question. I think it depends on the play. You know what I mean? The piece that I'm working on right now, I'm actually directing and I'm writing it. It's more of a devised piece. Um, and I can say that because the piece is very personal to me, that it has been very rewarding to write it. But not only write it, but also give it and share it with the actors, because it is a piece about African American women, and the space that is created is all women of color. So that has been very rewarding, but directing it has been very rewarding as well, because you get to go on this journey with that. Playwriting can be very lonely sometimes, you know what I mean? Because and I don't know how other people's writes, but you're alone most of the time. I'm a deviser as well, so I kind of do a hybrid of writing and devising the piece. Um, but the directing aspect is way more collaborative for me, and watching the actors work on the piece and help you develop the piece has probably been the most rewarding to me. So I can probably say directing. Um, yeah, directing has been the most rewarding for this process.